try and stay positive, that I'm working just as hard as everybody else, if not harder. So that helped with those types of feelings. Do better than they could and get your revenge that way. In this video, I'm going to talk about something a little bit different, and that is how to cope when you have lost your job. This is something that I know that some of you have been through or are going through, and it's something that I've been through as well a few times. I don't want to come across that as though I'm preaching or telling you how to live your life or anything like that, but it's just that there were a few things that helped me that I did when I was going through it. I'll tell you about them and hopefully they'll help you as well. The first thing I'll say is that it's important when you're going through something like that, a job loss, to try and stay positive, maintain a positive mental attitude. Now, you might think that, it's a negative experience. So how on earth are you supposed to maintain a positive mental attitude when it's a negative thing that's happening to you? But now is the most important time to maintain a positive mental attitude. Hopefully some of the things that I'll say in this video might help you to do that. And hopefully as well, I'll give you some tips that make you realize that it's not all negative. There are some positive aspects to it. When I was out of work, one of the feelings that I had, and maybe you can resonate with this, is feeling inferior to everybody else because they had a job and I didn't. And by everybody else, I mean people that I would encounter in my everyday life, people that I didn't even know. I mean, maybe they didn't have a job, but I kind of got the negative self-talk in my head that everybody else was doing okay and it was just me that wasn't contributing to society. So one of the things that I tried to do is maintain a work ethic whereby my job search, I treated it as if it was a job. So job applications, you'll know if you're involved in this how grueling it can be actually applying for jobs, because you've got to apply for a number of positions before you even get offered an interview, and then you've got to do a certain amount of interviews before you'll be offered a second interview, and so the volume has to be there unless you get lucky. So what I tried to do is think of it as a job in and of itself. So what I wanted to do was work as hard every day as other people that did have a job. So that enabled me to sort of look them in the eye, so to speak, and know that I was working just as hard, if not harder, than they work. And that allowed me to maintain my self-respect somewhat and battle these negative feelings of being inferior to everybody else because I didn't have a job, because what I was able to say to myself is that I'm working just as hard as everybody else, if not harder. So that helped with those types of feelings. Another thing I'll say is that losing your job and being out of work is nothing to be ashamed of, and you shouldn't think of it, you shouldn't think as though it is. In some ways, I think it actually puts you in an advantageous situation because of the fact that you've been through such a potentially formative life experience. People that have never been through a job loss, good luck to them in the big wide world. It's not something I would wish on anyone, but I think people that haven't been through it are missing something that people that have been through it have got, and that is that life experience, the lessons that you learn about yourself, how you cope with it, strategies that you put in place to deal with such a, what is for many people a very sort of frightening and concerning and depressing situation as being out of work. So I've been on both sides of the table when it comes to hiring and firing. You know, I've been a manager that is interviewing people for jobs. And what I can say is, at least from my opinion, is that if I was interviewing someone that had been through it, I think I would connect better with them than I would potentially with somebody who has never been through something like that. I'd be fascinated to know what they did to get through it. I mean, they might be going through it now. I'd be interested to know how they're coping, what they're doing. I think it would give me some good insight into what they're like as a person, what their character is. Someone who's never been through that is not going to have that advantage. And I do think it is an advantage. I don't think being out of work, having been sort of made redundant or whatever, I don't think it carries the same stigma as perhaps it used to. The advice here is to not treat it as if it's something to be ashamed of. Talk about it in job interviews in a kind of put a positive slant on it. Talk about it in a proud way. Be proud of yourself in terms of how you're dealing with it. It might be that some of the people on the interview panel have been through the experience themselves, and therefore you've got a chance to connect with them over that sort of shared experience that you've had. The next tip is to have a plan, and what that will help you do is to reassure yourself, because what you're gonna find is you'll get moments where, you'll get days probably where you'll feel more positive than others. There's going to be days when you're feeling particularly negative, or you might get sort of caught in a downward negative thought spiral. It's useful in those moments to be able to think to yourself that you've got a plan. You've got a plan in place, and you're going through the process of implementing that plan. You're following the plan. Obviously, the plan is going to vary from person to person. It doesn't need to be overly detailed, and you're not really interested in the end product of a written plan or anything like that, although you might decide to write some of this stuff down. It's more about giving yourself that feeling of being more in control. It may or may not have been your decision that caused you to be out of work. You might have left your job to start a new business or whatever, but if you've been made redundant, obviously, unless you selected redundancy, you might feel that you don't have control, and circumstances are controlling you rather than you controlling circumstances. But if you've got a plan that you've devised and you're going through the process of implementing it, what I found anyway, that was a source of reassurance. Before we continue, if you're considering a move towards working in health and safety, it's absolutely essential that you're well prepared. That's why I want to take a quick second to let you know that you can study for the NEBOSH Managing Safely or the NEBOSH General Certificate, both national and international versions, online with us at Stockwell Safety. So if you're ready to take the first step towards a rewarding career in health and safety, see the links in the description to explore our industry-leading e-learning, NEBOSH and NEBOSH courses. It might be that you decide that you're going to spend X amount of hours every day searching for job openings, and then you're going to spend X amount of hours applying for jobs. You're going to go through a methodical, thought out process when it comes to applying for each job, matching your skills and experience to the requirements of the job. You're going to make sure that there is some sort of feedback loop in your plan, so that if a month goes by and you haven't had as many interviews as you anticipated, then make sure that you're able to evaluate what is going wrong with your plan, come up with some adjustments that need to be made to the plan, and then go again for another month, 2 weeks, however sort of frequently you want to review your plan to find out whether or not anything needs to be improved or adjusted or tinkered with. Just the fact though that you've got a plan in place, psychologically it helps your mind when you your mind can start to run away with itself and catastrophize and start to pull you down into a negative thought spiral. This is when it helps to have a plan, because your mind isn't too bothered about the intricate details of the plan. Your mind just likes to know that there is a plan in place and that you are following it. The next thing linked to having a plan is maintain a routine. Obviously, if you were in full-time employment and now you're not, you've got 40 or more hours back that used to belong to your boss. This is one of the positive aspects. Remember I said at the beginning of the video that there are some positive aspects to this. This is one of them. The fact that a third of your life that you were giving away, obviously you were being paid for it, but a third of your life that was under the control of somebody else is now back under your control, and you're able to take a bit of control of your own time back. So don't squander that time that you've got available now. Maintain a routine so that you're getting up at the same time every day, you're going to bed at the same time every day, so you can establish a good sleep cycle. You don't want to let yourself get overdrawn when it comes to sleep. Also, make sure that you're putting in as many hours as you would if you were in full-time employment, but don't forget to give yourself some time off within that as well. When I say maintain a routine, I don't mean work flat out and just burn yourself out. Like I said, the job application process can be particularly grueling, but just treat it as if it was a job. That's what I did. Treated it as if it was a job. So I got started at the same time every day, took my lunch break, finished at the same time every day, and turned my mind to other things, gave myself a break from the job application process. Just thinking about it can be exhausting. So maintain some sort of discipline, maintain some sort of routine. I found was very, very helpful. Another thing I'll talk about, and I'll relay what happened to me, is to do with emotions and keeping them under control. So what happened in my case, and this, again, I'm relaying this to you so that, because I think it might be quite common with people that have been made redundant. I was made redundant or one of the times I was made redundant, it was as a result of a job restructure. Basically what happens is they reevaluate everyone's job and they take 2 or 3 jobs and they lump them all into one job, and then they interview for that job. If they're following a proper redundancy process, the people that are up for redundancy have to reapply for that job. And basically what happened in my case was I ended up obviously not getting given the job. I basically had to train up the person who did get that job in certain technical and operational aspects that they didn't, they hadn't got any experience in. And you might say, well, how did they get the job if they didn't have the, this is where the emotions come into it, you see. It can be a time of, feelings of bitterness, anger, frustration, all these things. But the thing is, the situation was that I was due a redundancy payout. I can't remember the exact amount of money we were talking about, but I think it was something like £3,000, which doesn't sound like much, and it isn't much, to be honest with you. But what I was planning to do with that money, and what I did do with that money in the end, is I used it to complete a national general certificate. Don't worry, this isn't an advert for the National General Certificate, the NEBOSH course, but that's what I was planning to do with it. So I needed that money, but there was a temptation there because of all these emotions to, just leave and tell them to stuff it, sort of thing. If I'd have done that though, even though I was on my redundancy period, my notice, so to speak, they could still have dismissed me under the disciplinary procedure. And they were the type of people that would do that. So what you need to do if you're in a similar sort of situation is keep your emotions in check. What's important, or what was important to me, is that I got that redundancy payout. So it's important, I think, to play the long game. Don't play the short game. Don't allow your emotions to dictate your behaviours and your actions, because you might be feeling that you want to sort of get revenge or whatever, or you want to sabotage. It might be those types of feelings that are creeping in, but what you need to do is get your revenge over the long term. If you've got those types of feelings, and I admit to them, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But get your revenge via the success that you get for yourself. Do better than they could, and get your revenge that way. Not that they're going to be thinking about you, but this is fuel for yourself to keep you going and to stop you from making any rash decisions. Let your revenge be, manifest via your long-term success. So do what you need to do to bring about that long-term success. Don't do anything rash that you're going to regret later on down the line. The next piece of advice I've got is to use the time to think about whether you actually do want to go back into employment or whether you want to get your own business started. I know a lot of people have a dream of starting a business, working for themselves, and they never do because they've got a job. It's not just the fact that 40 hours a week of their time is dedicated towards the job, and they might have a family as well, so they find it difficult to get the time to be able to dedicate to getting a business off the ground if they wanted to keep it going, and at least initially alongside their job. But I think also this definitely was a factor with me, is that because I had what I thought was a stable full-time employment, you don't want to kind of rock the boat. You kind of think, well, I'll take what I've got rather than risk it for what I might get or what might fail, i.e. the business might fail. And it kind of keeps you trapped in a way in employment. And if you think about it the right way and see it as an opportunity, getting pushed, i.e. being made redundant, might be a positive thing, because you might never have made the leap. You might never have decided to willfully hand in your employment, to willfully hand in your notice and branch out on your own. You might have never done that. You might have never got around to it. But now, because you've kind of been pushed out, now might be the opportune time to get something started, get your new business started, maybe using any redundancy money that you're entitled to. Because it's a case of, if not now, when? Because if you go back into full-time employment, you'll probably, if you're like most people, you'll probably forget all about starting this business, and you'll never get around to it. And that might end up being something that you regret far more later on down the road. And I know it's easy to say in hindsight, because sat here now, obviously I know that it worked out. Didn't know it back then. Those are some tips that come to mind when it comes to some tactics that might possibly be useful if you are in a position of having just lost your job. If you are in that position, keep your chin up, positive mental attitude, and I'll see you in the next video.